Yo, Aquaman The Lost Kingdom is not a bad movie. I mean, yes, before I went into the movie, I actually saw a few articles talking about how terrible the movie is and why DC is terrible. I mean, YouTube recommendation, everyone is screaming, that's the worst DC movie and The Flash was the worst DC. I had a great time with this movie. I'm not saying it was perfect, but it was far more better than the first one. I thought the first one was spectacular. The first Aquaman movie was all about the world, us discovering the world, going to going to a totally different world underwater. And there was the allure of that. Right now, they decided to actually focus a lot on the Brotherhood, on the fatherhood concept of the bloodline, kind of in a way, the consequences of the actions of our father or something like that, but not that much because that is touched on at maybe the third act. But generally, this felt more focused. Yes, there are a lot of things that they did not do right, but still, it's not as terrible as what people are trying to make it look like. So what actually worked? Number one was the visuals. The movie actually looks good. It's James Wan. I mean, of course it's going to look good, but there was a crisp feeling about the picture. It looked far more cleaner, despite the fact that they were in some really dirty or sandy or sometimes old ancient places. It had a crisp look to it, and I actually enjoyed that. Now the concepts, for example, there are these devices that Manta have. They look like octopus, but they're mechanical from an ancient civilization. And the whole idea of how that mechanism works for me was, I was like, wow, that's actually well thought through, because the machine looks like an octopus, but then the tails can actually work like propellers, so they can actually transform into engine propellers underwater, and they move in a certain way. And they gave me vibes of, I don't know if you remember Spider-Man 2, Dr. Octavius. There are moments like that, and there's a particular scene at the end that the same systems are utilized to do something, to save some people. So I was like, yeah, those two things, they were pretty cool. The idea was good, the idea of having this, and I think we'll talk about the bad, we'll talk about studio interference. I could see two different stories within this particular story. I could see Jason Momoa's story with his brother and having to go and rescue him so that they can help, the brother can help him take care of whatever he was taking care of. And the idea of, a cast brother. But for me, that was the story, and I would have wished to see more of that story, whereby Arthur's, father, the king, had another brother, and so the other brother got greedy and he wanted to create this technology that will take over, and then the one brother was forced to imprison this other brother. That was a very interesting concept. I wish they would have stayed with that and actually not touch other things, because we'll get to the bad. We'll get to the bad. I'm so tempted to dive into it because there's some things that they just messed up big time. But anyway, the sound design was pretty cool. I think again with those mechanical devices, the underwater general craft sound for me was kind of cool. The moments that they had to go to the desert and they meet these creatures that look like they have bones with them, that was pretty cool. I love the sound design with that, how they will drill into sand and then come out. And then when they went to the fight scene, the punches felt heavier. There are moments whereby snow comes out and it crumbles, and I was like, yeah, that sounds really good. The title reveal for the movie, I was like, yep, that's cool. The whole sequence with the kid and the aquarium and then going, that whole sequence was pretty cool. I was like, a lot of thought and a lot of storyboarding was put into this, so I appreciate that. The performances, I did not expect anything special. Jason Momoa was pretty cool. That's what I expected from him based on the first film, because he stayed consistent. But this time he was a bit more free. You could tell that he had a lot of creative input into his character, and he wanted. The movie begins with a song called "Born to Be Wild." Born to Be Wild, and so I thought, by that motorcycle scene, there's an opening scene with Aquaman and the dad. That opening just set the pace for the movie, because it was a king who was, he was a wild person outside that kingdom. He was a crazy, carefree person. So he was born to be wild, but then he's made to be a king, which is a boring process. So I thought that idea of that character being the way he was pretty cool, because now we are moving from being introduced to Arthur and getting to know who he is. So in this particular movie, you're getting to know that he was not that old serious character that we met in the first movie. So that was also pretty cool. I didn't have a problem with that. There is a scene that reminds me of Skull Island. I wish they would have stayed there for a bit more, because some ideas that were shown in that particular scene, I was like, damn, that's cool. That's pretty cool. For an Aquaman movie, that was pretty cool. And I believe that there was another movie that was supposed to be made by Warner Brothers. I think it was called The Deep, where you'd have all these creatures. And I feel that that particular island that they went to may have had an influence, because apparently those two stories were merged into this one story. So I saw a potential of that being a part of this particular story. Now let's just go into the bad. Number one, what I was talking about, James Wan and The Deep, and this feels like two different movies. You can actually see James Wan's movie, you can see studio movie, and you can see The Deep, that movie that they were supposed to make about those creatures those creatures from the first movie. You could see it being pushed and gelled into this movie. You could feel James Wan being told by the studios, come this way. You could see studio notes. You could actually see them clearly. You could see moments that were pretty, quickly, because it's a very, very, it comes and goes very, very quickly. And you can see someone from the producer seated there and going like, we need to make this shorter, we need to make this longer, make that shorter, because there's some abrupt scene. Like there's a scene, what was the queen, Nicole Kidman, her first appearance is so random that I was like, what? Why is she here? Something happens and then she shows up, and I'm asking myself, how is it that she's here? She's not supposed to be. I mean, she's supposed to be, she's the mother of the king. Why is she here and Amber Heard here when you can have all the security personnel around? So that was a very jarring decision to make, somewhere in a very, very odd part of the movie. The other thing I did not like was Manta. The actor's performance was good, but the script, they did not do justice to this character. I don't know why. I don't know what's wrong with DC, whereby they have to make they can't ground their villain, because there was a need. I don't know who gave them the idea that they needed a bigger villain, because there's Manta, he's controlled by someone else, and so you don't feel that his actions are based on him wanting to do wanting to get his revenge. It's him being controlled by another to do something else. So I felt like that was a missed opportunity. I wish it would have been more personal. I wish it would have been more intimate between him and Aquaman, without the influence of this other thing. Because the influence of this other thing, while it plays a big role within the movie, it just takes away from the main villain. Because I would assume that Manta would have made a better villain, like the last big boss, if they decided to treat him with a bit more respect, because it doesn't feel like they treated the character with that. It's like the studio heads were sitting down, they were going like, no, we want a bigger threat. That's a person, we need something more supernatural, we need something darker. And I think even with that bigger threat, I believe James Wan's movie might have been Manta to be the villain, and then the studio said we needed this other thing, because this other thing feels more like it was inspired by The Deep, because the storyline of this other thing feels more in line with the tone of The Deep, the creatures that were in The Deep. The other thing, and oh my goodness, the thing that pissed me off about this movie was a cockroach. Yep. If you've seen this movie, you know what I mean. That for me was hard to watch. I mean, it's played off as a gag, but for me it was one of the most difficult, and there are two of them. There are two of the most difficult scenes to watch, and I don't understand why they had to put it here. It could have been something else. And the sound design, man, just I had a really, really terrible. Great visuals, great action set pieces, great look, but just that one thing just threw me off. Apart from that, the other thing that did not work was messaging, because it's heavy on messages. It beats you over the head with the message of global warming. I mean, after every 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, there's something about global warming, climate change. Even the title reveal, it's something that you will associate with global warming. Even there are things that Manta is associated with, and it revolves around global warming. So I'm like, oh my goodness, we get the point, come on. You know, we don't need you to remind us about the real world. And that's what I keep saying. Cinema is not there to remind us about the real world. It's an escape. So when you go to an escape, especially for a comic book movie, there's nothing wrong with having a message in your movie, but it doesn't have to be so repetitive. Like every minute, every second, every minute that they get, it's just there. The other thing, I think that Nicole Kidman, I don't understand her role in this movie. And like the first movie, she did not have a lot to do here. She was not influential. I think in the first movie she was pretty much influential, but this one, now we get to see her, but she doesn't really feel. You could have cut out all her scenes and it would have not made any difference. For Amber Heard, if you don't like her, she's in the film. Yes, some of her scenes might have been cut out, but she's in the movie, and she plays a kind of big role, because there's two moments that she actually saves Arthur. Yeah, they're actually two clear moments, and she is interwoven into the story so much that she could not have been edited out. Sorry, people. So basically, apart from now all the negatives, I really enjoyed the action set pieces, especially from the second act up to the third act. Things just changed and they started moving. Actually, after he gets the brother, that's when things get interesting. Actually, let me put it this way. After the first time Aquaman, Manta, and his brother meet somewhere in an island, the island that I was talking about that feels more like a skull island, that's where things just change and begin actually moving. Because for the first few minutes I was struggling. It felt like they did not understand where they needed to take the story. It felt like they were struggling with how they wanted to mold, that particular arc. So when I went into the second act and the third act, that's when I felt like now the director was confidently in control of the direction of the movie, despite the fact that you could see a lot of studio interference within the movie. So basically that's Aquaman. I've tried to be very level-headed, but as a cinematic experience, I had a great time. I enjoyed the movie. It was not perfect, but I enjoyed it. So basically that's it. Remember to always watch what you enjoy and enjoy what you watch, and I shall see you on the next one.